Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we discuss the Detroit Lions' 42-29 victory over the Seattle Seahawks. We'll talk about the offensive moments, the defensive plays, discuss what we liked and didn't like, plus major takeaways going forward as the Lions head into their bye week. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Jameer Gibbs, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
I'm joined today, as usual, by James Cook, senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can hear him on the Get Around podcast as well. That drops on Mondays. James, as usual, great having you here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks. Always good to be here on a winning Monday.
That it is. And also hoping to join us at some point in the show is Coach Jerry Angers. We hope he will be joining us, and we will let you know if that does happen. All right, James, we got to start with our first overall reaction in a sentence or two. How do you feel after this game?
Really good. I mean, the Lions survived, a lot of penalties. Jared Goff played flawless. The run game was still there. The pass game came back to life. They had the black uniforms. They had the blueberries before. I think they can call these the blackberries. They've both resulted in pretty sweet results.
Yeah, I think I've been told that anytime the Lions wear one same color tops and bottoms, they're undefeated this year. So, my overall reaction, I'm going to quote a former NFL head coach. I'm going to take his comments kind of out of context, but I'm going to apply them about the Detroit Lions offense. And I'm going to quote Denny Green and say, they are who we thought they were. And that's the Detroit Lions offense. And they showed everybody in this game that they're still here and they're that exciting to watch. Before we move forward, let's hear from Coach Campbell and what he had to say right after the game.
Listen, proud of the guys. It was a heck of a win. I thought what we did really well was we played complementary football, and that's what good teams do. Every game's going to be different, and this is one where really the offense ended up having the big hat, but ultimately defense started us out. It was a big stop to start the game, got it back in the offense's hands, and then situational football before halftime. I thought our defense did a great job, and then the end of the game, man, 2 huge stops. It was great, man. Put points on the board offensively. A number of guys played really well, and I was proud of them.
So there you go, complementary football. All parts working together, or at least stepping up when the other part doesn't quite have it going yet. And we've seen that happen so many times when the Lions win football games. That's what happened at different moments in their win over Seattle. James, let's start as we do with what we liked. There's a lot to like here. James, get us started. What's the one thing that you liked?
Well, Jared Goff was perfect. 18 for 18, I think it was. Or was he 17 for 17 and then...
Nope. You had it right the first time. He was 18 of 18, and then St. Brown had the extra.
And then St. Brown had the one. So I was trying to remember whether it was 18 or 19. But yeah. And I mean, set a new NFL record, I think, for the most completions without an incompletion in an NFL game. He was just right on. And he was making some difficult throws in there, too. They weren't all just gimmies. I mean, that crossing route to Jameson Williams was something you had to, drop right into a zone in the coverage. They created a little bit more space on that play with Amon-Ra St. Brown stretching their defense out, but that was still something he had to kind of put in there. And there was another throw later in the game, I think, where he really had to thread it in there. And I'm trying to remember who. I think it was to Tim Patrick across the middle. So it's just a great game by Goff, which is nice to see after he's had a little bit of struggles the first few games of the season.
Well, if you go back to that first one you talked about, the one to J-Mo over the middle, Seattle was bringing major pressure on that play, and the Lions, I think, were in max protect, And there was a great job of picking up or slowing down the people so that Goff didn't have to throw it immediately. He was able to wait for J-Mo to get into that break. And you saw on the replay, Laporta went out of his way to get out of J-Mo's way to help continue to make that play happen. And you're right. Jared Goff was phenomenal in this game. And I want to say it might have been the third quarter. I'm trying to remember exactly when it happened. But there was a play where Goff spun out of a sack and looked like he was going to get sacked, took a small step forward, and completed it to J-Mo on a hook route. And actually, that was on the first drive of the game. And that was on a third down play, completed it, got a first down, and that led to a touchdown by Jahmyr Gibbs. And so that right there was awesome as a first quarter play and a great move by Goff because you don't always see all of that and out of him. And he stuck in there and he found somebody and he threw a laser.
Yeah, he did. And that pass to Jameson Williams was also off of play action, which we've said they need to get more play action back into the offense. And the play action worked very well because they had been running the ball so effectively, and Seattle had such a hard time containing Gibbs and Montgomery that they were having to sell out, like you said, and bring sometimes 5-6 guys to try to stop the run. They were having to run blitz.
Yeah, they absolutely were. And the play calling, I mean, we got to put Ben Johnson in here and the play calling. We talked about Jared Goff throwing the ball. James, we've talked about the over-under on Jared Goff running. You weren't on the preview last week, so you couldn't bring this up. So I have to ask, did you even contemplate the chance that Jared Goff might have receiving yards in this game?
No, he's only ever caught one pass ever before in his career. And that did not go for a touchdown. I think it was with the Rams. Yeah, and that was just a great play too. That's one of my things for one of the turning points, kind of
awesome.
The game. But that was awesome. Another good thing, sort of related to that, is the Lions were 5 for 5 in the red zone.
Awesome, big.
I mean, which after that 1 for 7 game against Tampa Bay, that's huge.
Yes, it was. And yeah, the play calling of Ben Johnson showed up in the red zone. It showed up throughout the game. And so that was exciting to see. I mean, 42 points. And again, I know you can look at the previous games that both of these two teams have played against each other. They've been high-scoring affairs. But coming into this one, if my memory is correct on the math, neither team allowed more than 20 points to an opponent going in. And so I did predict the Lions would score more than 26 or 27, the most they had scored all season, which they did. But both of these offenses showed how potent they can be. And James, none of those explosive plays, none of that great momentum by the receivers, the running back, by Jared Goff, none of that would have been possible without the play of the offensive line. And we know with Ragnow being out, there was going to be a change. The Lions elected to make two position changes, so to speak, by moving Graham Glasgow over to center because he's got the experience there, and then bringing Coyote Awashika in at left guard there. And you remember the Tampa game last year. Awashika played well for the Lions in the playoffs. He played well in this game as well. James, what were you seeing out of that?
Yeah, he played really well, I thought. And Graham Glasgow played better this week at center than he's played the first 3 weeks at left guard. So I think and one of the things that Jerry says a lot is depth, and the Lions played with a lot of depth. They got contributions from Awashika. Brandon Joseph played almost every snap on defense, and you wouldn't have known it. You didn't really hear his name played or name called, which is good for a DB. and then Tim Patrick coming in and Rodrigo. So the depth there was great, and Awashika and Glasgow just solidified that line. The rest of it was as it always is.
Exactly. It was that strong, that tough. It was that formidable. And you brought up Jerry, Coach Angers. So the man, the myth, the legend in the making is here. We got Coach Angers, again, former Michigan high school football coach of the year. Also, former coach of the week by the Detroit Lions, current scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, It's good to have you here. We're not even through the first quarter, so it's great to have you. We're talking about what we liked. We talked about Jared Goff a bit, and when you just heard what James talked about with the depth and Coyote, weigh in on a couple of those things as we continue to move forward.
Well, again, he stepped forward. Glasgow stepped forward playing at center. It's just huge for those guys, and you know that you can't win in this league. Look at the injuries that are going on right now across the league, and these guys got to step up and do their job, and they did. Cody again played. I thought tremendous. He had some of the biggest blocks on some of the biggest runs, and so just to see that, and maybe him and Glasgow have a good relationship or good talk, or they communicate well together. So it was nice to see that part come together and him step up, and we were able to put 42 points on the board. Kind of big.
That it is. And James brought up how we were 5 of 5 in the red zone, which is incredible. And here's another thing that happened, you guys. We outscored Seattle by 1 point in the third quarter. Now, things weren't perfect there, but there were some amazing plays, like the one where David Montgomery caught like a 1 yard pass, 2 yard pass. It might have been a 2 yard loss pass. Witherspoon went up, a collision you could hear in northern Michigan. And Montgomery takes it about 35 more yards down the field. And that ultimately led to the St. Brown to Goff touchdown. And that put the Lions up 28-14. And every time Seattle would get closer, the Lions would do something else, like the play we talked about, Goff hitting Jamo for that 70-yard one. So, Coach, what are your thoughts on the third quarter there?
Well, the big thing is Monty received his second Angry Run Award from Good Morning Football. His second already. And those guys are talking about this may be the best one all year. They don't know if they're going to see another one as good. Now, he beat out that little running back they have for the Ravens. And just to hear that, dude, I've watched that clip probably 70 times. And Witherspoon is a dog. And their pregame was about how we aren't very tough. I don't know if you heard it. I can't tell you the exact words, but I'm going to tell you right now, that video hopefully is probably being played over and over and over in the DB room, because he got lit up. And not only on that run play did he get lit up, but for him to gain all those yards. And then before he went out of bounds, he kind of just took the guy and threw him off him and stepped out of bounds, never hit the ground. So that ignited us. And you know that. I mean, that our team, and I think Patrick caught a pass right off to that and freaking ran a guy over or stiff armed a guy. And so, that was, you found out how tough the Detroit Lions are, hands down.
That we did. And James, what were your thoughts on the third quarter? I mean, the Lions went into halftime up 21-7. We know the reputation from last year, and we wanted to see more of the first half and the second half for the Lions. Obviously, Seattle's offense got going a little bit, but what were your overall takeaways from the third quarter?
Yeah, that Montgomery run was that was the highlight of the third quarter, I think. And I saw this video on Twitter where they spliced together the thing of Tyrell Dotson trying to fire up the Seahawks before the game, telling them about how they're not that tough. And then they splice in immediately to the Montgomery running over Witherspoon clip on loop. And with some added sound effects, I think, too. And that was just phenomenal. Whoever did that, that's like chef's kiss. It was perfect. And just to come out in the third quarter and keep the momentum going. They had a 2-touchdown lead, but they didn't take their foot off the gas. They kept going. They didn't abandon the run in the third quarter, which is also good. They passed a little bit more than they did in the first half, but that's also been their tendency.
They did. They passed more, but they still only threw the ball 19 times compared to Seattle's 56.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to explain football to a kid? It's near impossible to make it make sense. I know my girls didn't get it at first. Well, meet Future Fans, an innovative brand that helps little kids become big fans by embedding the rules of football into parallel games and activities. My daughters and I read through the book and we played each of the games. Their excitement grew as we progressed, and at the end, you could see the connection between the activities and how they correlated to understanding football. It's a well put together product. Folks, in addition to running Not the Same Old Lions podcast, I'm also a teacher. I know a thing or two about learning. Future Fans specifically designed their product to engage and educate kids about the game of football. My daughters aren't just fans of watching football either. They're now playing flag football too. And they're big Lions fans. If you want your kid to understand football, Future Fans is for you. It's only $49.99. Use the code LIONS at futurefans.com to get 10% off and unlock a lifetime of memories with a kid in your life starting now.
So, but you're right. And you know what? The Lions, they spread the ball around. And I think, we'll even talk about a major storyline coming out later, I guess, about the emergence or the potential emergence, or I would call it contribution, of Tim Patrick. We're starting to see what he's doing for this offense here. We've spoken mostly about the offense, about what we liked. James touched on the defense a little bit with the depth piece, but Coach, can you weigh in on what you saw out of this defense?
Well, here's the thing is, I keep hearing, I heard excuses all this morning about, hey, they didn't have their 4 defensive linemen and stuff like that. We're missing Branch, Davenport, and Barnes. Let me say that again. We're missing Branch, Davenport, and Barnes. Okay. So the pressure, we lost Davenport. The run that Kay Walker had, where he started zone to the left and then kicked it back to the right, Barnes or Branch make that play, hands down. Our backup linebacker came all the way across, and you don't do that with Kay Walker. I mean, we experienced him when he was playing for Michigan State. I think he had 5 touchdowns in one game. I won't bring up what team that was against, but so that's the thing is with that. So that's the big thing with the defense. The other thing I saw in the defense was we were 3 or 4 or maybe 5 plays. We were inches of knocking balls down, and he just threw some great balls on those. So, you can go back and forth that the PI calls. We had nine penalties on defense. The PI calls. I think Davis got a legitimate gripe on some. Heck, the one he got ran over. So I think that's the biggest thing I look at. So we played to our level with backups, and we will get better as the year goes on. Defense has been holding us in for 3 weeks, right? Offense held us in for week 4. That's what complementary football, that's what Coach Campbell talks about all the time. Complementary football. If the offense is scoring points and the defense is giving up points, all we have to do is outscore them. If neither one is scoring, we got to make sure we outscore them. So we did a great job.
And the defensive effort early on was huge because it was an effort by the shirt tails. Anzalone is holding on to that jersey, and Metcalf's fighting forward, and Jack Campbell comes up with the turnover and making hit. Carlton Davis scoops it and runs half a football field. And so there were some great things. Now, as you already alluded to, there's some things on the defense we want to talk about that didn't go perfect, but all things considered, it went really well, and they did things at pivotal moments. Any other praise we want to heap on overall before we get to some concerns and then we get to the turning points and pivotal moments?
Yeah, I think that the defensive backs, despite the penalties that were called, had pretty good games. I mean, the Seahawks have one of the best trios of running or of wide receivers in the NFL, with DK, Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Carlton Davis gave DK Metcalf anything he wanted. And Davis is 6'1", 206 versus 6'4", 235. And he was getting at DK. DK won his, obviously he had a pretty good game, 100 yards receiving, but Carlton Davis almost got that one pick when he cut in the one route over the middle. He was very aggressive in man coverage. I think he took it as a personal challenge to cover a receiver like DK Metcalf. And we'll get to Terry and Arnold a little bit later. But so Jerry, what would you think about a rule like this? That like if a wide receiver initiates contact after 5 yards, holding becomes illegal.
I would love it. That's a great call. And that's the other thing is when your hand there, that a couple of those pass interference calls, those PIs they were hand fighting, and it's going both ways. I mean, and I'm going to bring up, they complain again. The sports shows this morning said that was not a pick on Seattle. on that pass play that overturned that first down catch. But he had his arms up. He wasn't running. He ran into the guy on purpose, and it goes both ways. So,
Yeah.
when I was coaching, all I would tell the officials would be consistent good or be consistent bad, but just be consistent. And there was not a lot of consistency in that game yesterday. And I don't complain about the referees a whole lot after games, but during games I make sure I let them know. And there was just too many things on that. But Arnold, that poor kid, man, he's just grinds, and he barely, and he's a rookie. 2 years from now, those calls aren't going to be made. Probably, maybe a couple of them this year.
Well, that puts us right into the area of things we didn't like or concerns, and we're talking about the penalties, right? And so the Lions had a lot of penalties. I believe, was it 12 penalties they had in the game? Quite a few. I'm going to say this. Some of them I think were legit. They were. Some were really close. And I think, I heard from a number of people, they're like, Arnold's horrible. We got to get him out of there. And I'm like, no, that's not accurate. Does he have some things to improve on? Yes. Do I think that he is still the potential lockdown guy that we drafted, that we're hoping he can be? Yeah, I do. This is his fourth game into an NFL career, and he's gone up against 3 very good receivers in those 4 games, unless he was on Harrison Jr., which I think Davis was. And so he's gone up against some elite talent and some elite quarterbacks. He's got a bye week here. I'm hoping the Lions are going to work with him a little bit on some of those things. I know they will. I will say this, though. I heard you, Coach. The narrative this morning was more about that pick play. And you know what? I would say some calls went both ways in this game, you guys. It wasn't just the Lions got the break here or Seattle got the break. And so that's where, like we saw it the week before when they were talking about the interception that Goff threw, but the whistles had been blown because of the 2-minute warning. The narrative has to be accurate, and it's got to be accurate. You can't invent stuff. And so you can single that play out there, but there were a couple of plays where you're kind of like, where was the penalty on there? Even Aikman in the broadcast talked about not seeing one. And you know what? That 2-point conversion that the Lions got a penalty on that Seattle took, and they showed the replay later on, it looked like Metcalf legit caught that 2-point conversion. And so, you're right, though. It goes back to consistency, Coach, and that's what you're just looking for, right?
Oh, for sure. And again, it's going both ways. I mean, there was calls both ways that, the bottom line is the Lions beat them. The bottom line is the Lions showed how tough they are. The bottom line is the Lions outscored them. You can complain about official, injuries and things like that, but hey, both teams are suffering. That's all I heard. All they lost, they had their 4D linemen down. It drives me crazy. Well, let's go and talk about what the Lions did without. They lost the best center in football and put a guard in there, and then put a backup guard at left tackle, and we put 42 points on the board. I don't care if you're in the NFL. I don't want to hear excuses. You got 69 guys to pick from, and that's your choice. Our 69 are better than your 69. End of story.
Yeah, and I think another difference in the game, I mean, the Lions did have 12 penalties, 101 yards. 9 of those were on the defense. 6 of those gave the Seahawks first downs. But they got called for the pick play, and then they didn't score afterwards. The Lions got called for a pick play on Brock Wright, and then a couple plays later scored still, even on converting a long, being behind the sticks after that penalty. I mean, that's the difference. The Lions overcame those penalties, and Seattle didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Great point there. Another thing that I didn't love, and this is just because the Lions scored too fast, I guess. I guess that's the result of this. But Seattle had the ball for 34 minutes, so we lost time of possession. Seattle had 38 first downs. No team has ever had that many first downs in a game and lost a game before. And so I think, though, I like that part that, that they lost. But giving up 38 first downs, losing time of possession, I can't help but wonder, Coach, if that led to some of the tackling issues we saw in the second half.
Oh, there's a lot of, they had a lot of plays. They were tired, and they went to hurry up offense. When they go to hurry up offense, we can't sub our packages in. We got a ton of packages out there. I mean, Trevor Nowoski played some, Houston played, and then the offense deep or the big D lineman and the smaller D lineman, the quicker guys with pass pressure. So, those took, but I think Seattle had a long drive. Yeah, they did because they had 3 in a row, 70, 80, and whatever. And the defense, they scored. We got the ball back. Boom, we went 70 yards for a touchdown. Now the defense has to get back in the field again. So that's your difference in your time disparity a little bit, because the Lions are going to drive the ball and probably take 4 or 5 minutes off the clock. The Lions are going to get a few more first downs. But when you score on one pass play like that, excuse me, that's now your defense is back in the field and they just had to defend along. They didn't get their rest, they didn't get their time, they didn't get to look at the iPads or whatever they use on the sidelines. They had to get right back on there and play. So those things all fall into play on that. I'll take the 70-yard pass play though.
As will I. James, any thoughts on the tackling issues or any other things you didn't like or concerns you had in this one?
I'm just gonna say that I guess Geno Smith is Detroit's kryptonite. There's just something about him that is perfect for Aaron Glenn's defense, because he's just torn them up in 4 games.
Yeah.
I mean, this game had 71 points. The last 3 before that were 80, 93, and 68 between the two teams. So it's just always been a shootout between these teams. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's a definite trend.
Yeah, I mean, when you give up 516 total yards to the other team and you win by double digits, that is pretty incredible. A big part of that is the defense getting turnovers. So let's move into turning points, pivotal moments. James, let's start with you. Give us one that you thought was pivotal.
Well, you addressed the Campbell forcing the fumble and Davis return. That one was huge because that turned into points and quick points and gave the Lions the lead and all the momentum early in the first half. And Seattle was playing catch up from there on. So that's part of the reason for that disparity in yardage and first downs and time of possession and all that. I mean, Seattle ran 90 plays. Detroit ran 53.
And part of that is the Lions didn't get beat deep. They made them work their way down the field. Even though they earned all those yards, those were some hard-fought yards that they had to earn. Coach, Can you talk about that? So the way the Lions were able to do that?
Well, that's a big thing. So and then you go back to the play thing if you want to talk about it. We just talked about the one play. We also had the fumble recovery for a short drive. Those are big things. Those are so, they'll take those away. So I can't remember where he ended up on that. It was the 18-yard line, 20-yard line, maybe inside that on the fumble recovery. Pivotal points on that, not only that turnover, but I think one of the biggest pivotal points that people probably are going to talk about too much is Jared Goff on his little spin around, step up in the pocket, avoid the sack, and hit the shot. That's when you kind of look like, oh boy, this dude is locked in. And I think that was a huge play. I think that was a pivotal point in that situation. I want to emphasize another one that I never worried about the game, but I did worry about it, that we were going to lose it because we always kept that lead. But again, Gibbs scores his first touchdown. Who was the first guy in the end zone congratulated? Monty.
Yep.
Guys, this is as a coach, I'm watching this going, these guys love each other, man. These guys they don't care who scores as long as we, the Lions, score. And I think those are pivotal moments. We can talk about the pass to Goff. We can talk about J-Mo dunking the football because he took a 15-yarder, even though he was paying homage to the greatest receiver maybe of all times. It definitely in the Lions, maybe of all times in the NFL. And those are just things that are pivotal points, but it's all these little things. For me as a coach, I sit and watch in a game because I can't watch a game. I have to analyze everything because that's what I do. And I see all these little things and I go, another pivotal point. Lions are going to win today. Another reason Lions are going to win today. Another reason Lions are going to win today. And I just love this team and I love the staff.
That is awesome. That's good. And you know what I'm not throwing pivotal points is really it probably doesn't perfectly fit in this category, but I didn't give a shout out to Aleem McNeil's play or DJ Reader's play. And if you had those two guys and Levi and Malcolm Rodriguez, they all combined for a total of 3 sacks. And so, as we saw, Geno Smith is not an easy guy to get down. Getting that pressure up the middle by Reader and McNeil, that was huge. And that did change what they had to do a little bit. And so, some great things there by the defense. James, add something else that you thought was pivotal or important to winning this game.
I thought the start time of the game was critical because the Lions are 8-2 under Dan Campbell when they play in prime time.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Another pivotal moment might be, 6 extra points? 6 extra points. And we made the one after the penalty. And the funny thing is, coach is like, why do we get a penalty? Why do we get a penalty? Because they didn't really show it in the broadcast. You had to find it later and some other stuff. And the funny thing is, my wife goes, that was like his best extra point right there, was the one he had to kick from the furthest away.
Yeah, they should just take a celebration penalty every time because he looks much more comfortable kicking from 15 more yards back than kicking those first 3 extra points. You were like, oh, did this not go in? Because we were all close. Yeah. And then that one, he just drills.
Yeah, could be right. Doesn't like seeing that big goalpost. Likes to make it look a little bit smaller. So, one other thing too that people didn't notice that I picked up on our kicker, he kicked it inside the landing zone and it rolled out of the back of the end zone. They had to start at the 20.
Yes, that happened.
Okay, and they drove 80 yards and scored. But the point is, as soon as that happened, I'm like, yeah, that's sweet. They're starting at the 20. And so those are things that you're going to see are going to come out as the season goes on. And that was just a great kick by him. Hit it in the zone, roll out the back of the end zone. They started at the 20. So a lot of stuff to work on during the bye week.
All right. Well, before we get to the bye week, let's talk about some major storylines, a hodgepodge of stuff, just things to talk about coming out of this game. I want your thoughts, first off, on the play late in the game. The Lions are inside their 2-yard line. It's right before the 2-minute warning, and they're going to attempt a long pass. Oh. And Jared Goff got safetied on that play. Tim Patrick was open, so if he had the time, he could have got there. The announcers said they knew the 2-minute warning was coming, so even if the ball went incomplete, it was going to stop anyway. Guys, I'm looking at who wants to take this one. What are your thoughts on this?
I thought the weird thing was that after that play, after they reversed it, they then changed the clock back to 2:01 instead of 2 minutes. So it didn't matter. They had to run another play before the 2-minute warning anyway, which was just odd. I thought there was no way that that play only took 2 or 3 seconds.
I agree with that. Coach, this is not a play call that the average fan was expecting to see, but the Lions do not run an average offense. But tell us what you're thinking and the thoughts behind this.
Well, defense, when I worked at Saginaw for a couple of years with the analytics stuff and his defense, even on the college level as well as the NFL level, when your back is against the wall like that, when you're inside the 5-yard line, there's 2 things you got to defend: the run or the shock play to take a shot. That's 2 things you got to defend. Because teams because nobody thinks you're going to do it there. I did not mind the call at all because Patrick was wide open, and that is a great opportunity. If you think about what they said, if it's incomplete, the 2-minute warning, they got a chance to take a shot. The problem is I don't think Jared got back far enough. I don't think he had enough depth on there to get the look to let him clear. They were a lot of times defenses are going to bring the gas because they're trying to get a turnover in that situation, and maybe we run a little shorter route in there. So everybody of course is like, oh my God, what are they doing? We had a 2-score lead, guys. He ate the ball instead of throwing an interception. So those are all different things on there. Hindsight's 2020. If he completes a pass to Patrick, everybody's like going, oh my God, we're the greatest offense ever. We got the greatest OC. Now what are they doing? So take a shot, shock play, or run the ball out of the end zone. Either or. It backfired a little bit, but 2-score lead, we're in pretty good shape because it's awful tough to. And again, if we don't, even if that doesn't happen, it's in the, we turn it over, we punt, we still got to punt out of the end zone in the short box. So a lot of things to think about. Not concerned with the play, something they'll learn from, and I'll guarantee we'll see it again sometime this year.
Oh yeah, it's something I didn't mind that call either. Because like you said, you get that big chunk play from Tim Patrick. If you get the play off, he was wide open. You're going to get 25, 30 yards at least. Now you're in a position where you can run your full offense. You can do whatever you want. They were down to one timeout. You're going to be under 2 minutes. Then one timeout, one more time, first down, and the game's over.
Yep, exactly. I hear you guys on both of those things. I will say to anyone listening who thought it was a bad call, I'm not going to argue because it's an opinionated thing. I do think hindsight is 50-50 on everything. And if it works, like the fake punt against the Kansas City Chiefs to open the season last year, you're brilliant. And if it backfires, you're like, what the heck were we thinking? And so all I will say, and because I don't think the Lions get enough credit on this, especially Coach Campbell, his moves are more calculated than you think. That's my perception. There is so much depth. And to him and to Ben Johnson, he's got help making these decisions. He's not doing it in a vacuum by himself. But let's talk about that guy, Tim Patrick. What do you guys see on? This is the number 3 receiver we wanted all of training camp. This is the guy we wanted Donovan Peoples-Jones to be. 2 catches on 2 targets for 52 yards. He was doing some serious blocking out there as well. Are you guys you feeling good? This is a guy we needed at number 3. What are your thoughts on Patrick?
I think he's perfect. Like you said, he fits what they needed as a third receiver. And with a lot of teams, the third receiver is your slot guy, but with the Lions, that's Amon-Ra St. Brown. So they needed a big guy as your third receiver, and that's what he brings. And he's also a very physical run blocker, which is something that the Lions demand out of all of their running or receivers, is that you have to be able to block in the, for other people to open them up, and other people are going to block for you to get you open. So I think he fits perfectly. If he stays healthy, that's a great pickup, and he looked good in that game.
And an inexpensive pickup at that, by signing to your practice squad, not having to trade for him or any of that stuff. Coach, what are you seeing out of Patrick?
Oh, totally agree. He had some big blocks on big runs, coming down. The nice thing is when you got a big body like that, all the receivers block. Raymond, every one of those guys block. Every one of them is going to attempt to block. But 6'3" is a lot better than 5'10", 5'11". They're longer. They can get in front of them. It's harder to see over them if you can't peek. He bases you up. As a DB, you can't peek left, peek right to figure out where the run play is going. So it's huge. He comes down, he'll put a pad on you. He had a couple big catches in the run he had. I mean, he made you saw him at the end of the run when he came down the sidelines. Who ended up on their back? It wasn't him, it was the DB. And so huge pickup for us. I think with both those guys that we have up, we got some size in there, and we could go really big. And I just, I think just a shout out to how far he's come along. It was funny because the announcers, I remember him saying, well, he's not as fast as he was a few years back after all those knee injuries, but he still covered some ground and he's still big. So it's a great pickup. And I agree. I think he's definitely going to help us a ton.
And the shout out goes back to my uncle and my cousin who are big Broncos fans, and they were mad at the Broncos for letting him go. And they were thrilled that the Lions were able to get him because they saw the talent that's there. You guys, another thing the Lions exposed is how flawed the rating system is for a quarterback. Because Jared Goff by himself had a quarterback rating, not a QB, but a rating of a 155.8. And Amon-Ra St. Brown had a rating of a 135.4. Neither of those are perfect scores, but when you combine them, you get a perfect 158.3. And so, I mean, Coach, you've done a little more math in your lifetime than me, but when you have two things that aren't perfect and you add them together and do the math out and divide them, you get perfection, right?
Yeah, that's the Pythagorean theorem.
There
A
we
squared
go.
plus B squared equals C squared. If you take the square root of the two, they're equal. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know how you go 18 for 18 and not have a perfect score. And
I heard the explanation of the advanced analytics on this and whatnot. So we understand the rationale, if you will. But there was another quarterback this year who had a perfect rating, but I thought he had an incomplete pass in that perfect rating. I know we did. Four of them. Because the Lions were the first team in like 70 years to play an entire game with no incompletions, and that other game only had one pass thrown in it, and it was completed. So I don't get caught up in the rating. I will just say this shows there's something wrong with it. You need to fix it or something. That's my thought. James, what are your thoughts on this analytics?
Yeah, I think one of the things that goes into the quarterback rating that that doesn't really show up as much is that he took 3 sacks. Yeah. I think that's considered a negative in the quarterback rating.
Okay.
So I think when Kyler Murray had the perfect one, he didn't get sacked in that game. And that's basically the only difference. But as far as I'm concerned, Jared Goff was perfect in that game, aside from the safety.
So another thing I guess we can bring back up again is the pass from Amon-Ra St. Brown to Jared Goff. You know, again, it looks great when it works. If it didn't work, you would have heard critics say, why would you send Goff out for a pass? He's so slow. Coach, I did mention to James earlier, he didn't have an over-under on Goff for receiving yards, only the rushing yards thing. And I blame James for not being on the preview show as the reason Goff did not run for some yards in this game, because I think James might have been 3 for 3 on that. But that play was brilliant, and it's brilliant because St. Brown has to throw a perfect pass on that play to make it happen, and it worked.
No doubt. I mean, he said that too. He said he threw it on Friday and it was a perfect pass. And then, of course, he starts talking about how he is the third string quarterback if 2 guys go down, and he's got a great arm and stuff like that. But, you know, St. Brown's one of those guys, he can do anything. We know that. And you know what? If something happened, I could see him playing quarterback. Not sure how well he'll keep passing it. But and Jared, I mean, you know, James talked about his running and how he's trying to run for first down every game. And that was a pretty good pass route, man. He sold it, kind of looked back, you know, lazy. And then he hit that 4.2 speed to get to the back of the end zone and make the catch. But the best throw of the game, I think, was that ball may have made it up into your seats, Matt. He threw that ball so far. I'm thinking, God, if Matt's up there, I wonder if he caught that, because it probably hit that second deck. So, you know, oh God, I just love watching these guys, and they're not done. They already mentioned that last night. They got a whole bunch of stuff still in the trick bag.
Well, and again, we said this before last episode. I seriously think the Lions are changing the NFL. You saw Seattle run a lateral play in this game. You know, for so many years, you've seen teams just do the basic, and with very little creativity, which meant there was so much room to grow, right? We know that word, growth mindset, right? Your ability to consider more options out there. And the Lions just continue to push that envelope at every level.
Yeah, and that throw was just perfect. I mean, he lofted it. You see that happen a lot of times where they run that reverse to a receiver and it's his option to throw the ball, that they try to gun it in there. And St. Brown resisted that urge and just lofted it perfect over that linebacker. And it was a great throw.
And, you know, we talked about the play of David Montgomery earlier. We may have mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs briefly, but again, the way these two guys complement each other, and Coach talked about it, they're not, I want my numbers, they're, I want to work together, we want to win football games. By having such great running backs, right, it keeps them fresh throughout the game. 14 carries by Gibbs, 12 by Montgomery, you know, and then you add a little bit of the passing game in here. It really is a great recipe for success. And They said David Montgomery's underrated. They said that on the broadcast. He was never underrated to me when he played in Chicago. And if you go back and listen to the episode when the Lions traded for him, listen to the excitement and the voice that was projected from this show when the Lions got him, because we knew what we were getting in David Montgomery. I mean, Coach, is there a running back you'd rather have than David Montgomery in that role?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the other thing too is they're starting to switch them back and forth on who's running inside, who's running outside, who's catching outside passes, who's carrying flare passes. Monty made that great catch. I think it was last week, right, where he took the one off the ground. I think it was Monty, right?
It was.
The run I think about, and I know you guys saw it on the TV, was that one where he ran it up the middle for, 8 or 9 yards, and the crease was about a foot wide, and Gibbs took it in, patient in there, saw that little bit of crease between the guard and the center, I think it was, and just kind of turned his shoulders to get through there and exploded in for an 8 or 9. Those plays, Monty would have went through there 100 miles an hour, smashing, running over people, and probably would have gained the same yards. But Gibbs, with his patience and not to kick it outside, but saying, I can run between the tackles too, only unloads that two-headed monster, because now you cannot defend on where we're going, who's catching, and who's running sweeps and tosses and stuff like that. So, again, 26 carries, how many total yards? Best running back duel in the game, hands down. Hands down.
All right. Another big event happened on Monday night. Calvin Johnson entered Pride of the Lions on Monday Night Football, much like Lomas Brown did on Monday Night Football a year ago. I saw an awesome photo on social media because there were a lot of former Lions there representing. And the photo that caught my attention was Herman Moore, Brett Perryman, Johnny Morton, and they had Willie Green, the touchdown machine, in there with them. I remember when Brett Perryman and Herman Moore were the first teammates in NFL history to each get 100 receptions in the same season. And so that was really cool to see that. James, you were talking about the 93 team and a lot of the players from then as well.
Yeah, well, they had 93 players.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, they had 93 former players. I think it ended up actually being more than that. The Lions released a list before the game of who was going to be there for the homecoming, they were calling it. And I don't think they had Herman Moore or Brett Perriman on that list. So I think it was maybe more than 93. But I mean, it was Calvin Johnson, Glover Quinn, Golden Tate, Jason Hansen, Eddie Murray, all the way back to Greg Landry. Jerry Ball was there.
Ooh, Jerry.
Mike McMahon, Joik Bell, Eric Kramer, Jim Arnold. I mean, it was all over the place. Tahir Whitehead, Stephen Tulloch. They were just players coming back from all over. And like you mentioned, Willie Green, Rodney Peete, Mark Spindler, Eric Hipple, Jeff Chadwick from the Smurfs team.
James, Jerry, before we get out of here, any last comments, any last words for our listeners?
Go Tigers.
I was just going to end just like Jared Goff ended his press conference, and go Tigers.
Go Tigers. An exciting time in Motown right now, whether it's baseball or football. As for the Lions, next weekend is the bye week. After that, they will be traveling to Dallas for a road game. We will be in touch. We'll let you know what's going on. We'll maybe try and do an episode or two in between then, but we'll definitely be previewing that Dallas matchup. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Tell your friends and family about the show. Like, comment on socials. Please subscribe regardless of your listening platform. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.